Good evening, everyone. I'm Larry DeMarco, the Executive Manager of the International Council for Men and Boys, and I'm delighted to welcome you to tonight's reception commemorating Men's Equality Month. This month is not just a celebration, but an important reminder of the many unique challenges facing men and boys globally. From disparities in educational attainment and health outcomes to biases in legal systems and workplace safety, men continue to confront significant challenges that deserve thoughtful attention and action. Men's Equality Month serves to shine a light on these 12 areas of male disadvantage, which include, among others, the growing educational gap, where boys face higher dropout rates and underachievement compared to their female peers, a health crisis marked by a 5-year shorter life expectancy for men, and the alarming rate of male suicides, which is nearly 3 times higher than that of women. Our aim tonight and throughout this month is to foster dialogue and collaboration to address these issues in meaningful ways. This reception is an integral part of our advocacy, coinciding with International Men's Day today, November 19th, a day dedicated to positive male role models and celebrating the essential contributions of men in every area of life. We believe that recognizing these contributions and addressing challenges with fairness benefits society as a whole. I will present along with a remarkable panel of 5 other speakers, each distinguished in their fields of social advocacy, health, law, and research. Their presentations will explore not only the difficulties that men face, but also the opportunities for transformative policy and social change. Please hold your questions until after we're all finished. And you can, if you're online, please put them in the chat room and Rebecca can present them to me at the end. And we'll reserve 10 minutes for question and answer. To everyone online and in this room, thank you for joining us. Your presence and advocacy is crucial toward recognizing and addressing these challenges. So first, I will start and give a visual presentation of the 12 items of male inequality. The disadvantages that men face often intersect, reinforcing or triggering other challenges, forming a complex web. For each of the 12 items that you see here, I will highlight additional problems that each item causes, demonstrating the importance of addressing male inequality holistically. I will do this by visually illustrating the connections among the 12 areas of male disadvantage. This will hopefully guide our efforts to remedy male inequality. Education. Boys' lower educational attainment, such as bad grades and higher dropout rates, often lead to underemployment and economic insecurity, which requires men to take dangerous jobs, leading to increased risk of workplace injury and death and potential homelessness. Lower educational attainment also feeds into low self-esteem, depression, and higher suicide rates. Health and mental health. Men's health disparities, including the lower life expectancy and high-risk job exposure, and poor mental health leads to underemployment and economic insecurity. Physical health issues often increase susceptibility to mental health challenges, which can affect our children and reduce our ability to parent, and can lead to loss of equal parental rights. The boy crisis. The boy crisis refers to widespread underachievement among boys and young men, mostly caused by loss of purpose and father absence. This leads to low self-esteem, depression, and lower educational attainment, which leads to underemployment and economic insecurity, perpetuating a downward spiral of social disengagement and social isolation. False allegations. Men disproportionately face false allegations, which lead to mental health problems and depression, and disadvantages in custody battles, which lead to loss of parental rights. Legal issues from false allegations further lead to loss of employment and economic insecurity. Victims of violence. Men are more frequently victims of violent crimes and homicide, yet resources for male survivors are scarce. Injury from violence causes decreased health and decreased mental health from trauma, and that can lead to underemployment and economic instability. Unequal parenting rights. Custody court bias, which limits fathers' rights, creates father absence and the boy crisis, as boys are more severely affected by father absence than girls. This causes depression and, in extreme cases, suicidal ideation. The financial toll from family court is a leading cause of bankruptcy and economic insecurity. Legal system bias. Men suffer gender biases in the legal system, and we discussed that in the previous slide, related to family law, legal of absence, underemployment, bankruptcy, depression, and suicidal ideation. But also in criminal court, it leads to men being more likely to be arrested, convicted, and imprisoned, which also leads to underemployment, economic insecurity, poor mental health, low esteem, and depression. Intimate partner abuse. Even though male victims are equally likely to be victims of intimate partner violence, there's very limited support and lack of resources for men, resulting from bias in the legal system and bias in the media. This leaves men vulnerable to depression and suicide ideation, which results in a loss of parental rights from that decreased inability to parent. Homelessness. Men represent a significant majority of the homeless population worldwide, resulting from underemployment and economic insecurity, which are discussing in many slides. This is caused by factors like biases in the legal system, discussed previously, media biases, I'll get to that later, and mental health issues. Without stable housing, men face poor health and limited employment opportunities, causing a vicious downward spiral. Workplace injury and death. Men experience disproportionately high rates of workplace injuries and fatalities from manual labor and hazardous jobs. Severe injuries can lead to homelessness and health complications, disrupting men's roles in their families and communities, leading to father absence and the boy crisis. Reproductive and adoption rights. Men have no reproductive rights and less parental rights compared to women. This lack of rights contributes to financial strain, or health and depression. Media bias. Unfair media bias and negative portrayals of men leads to bias in legal judgments, both criminal and family court matters, always believing the accuser. These biases also lead to a lack of resources for male victims of intimate partner violence. The disadvantages that men face often intersect, reinforcing or triggering other challenges, forming this complex web. Each of those 12 items of male disadvantage discussed previously are interconnected, emphasizing the importance of addressing male inequality holistically. Our second presenter is Warwick Marsh with Dads for Kids, all the way from Australia. He will discuss International Men's Day. Warwick is a passionate advocate for fatherhood and family, known for his extensive work supporting fathers with the Dads for Kid initiative. With decades of experience in family advocacy and community leadership, Warwick has dedicated his life to empowering men to be the best dads they can be. In 2008, Dad for Kids established the International Men's Day global coordinating website to promote and encourage men, because good men become good fathers. Their work with International Men's Day and Dads for Kids has positively impacted countless men, fathers, and families, fostering stronger father-child relationships and promoting the importance of fatherhood in society. Through Dad for Kids, Warwick continues to inspire and provide resources that help fathers build meaningful and supportive connections with their children. I am so glad to present Warwick Marsh.
So, first of all, huge thank you, Larry, for that incredible introduction, and a huge appreciation to everybody here listening to this very historic broadcast, Zoom call on International Men's Day out of New York to encourage and to speak to the international community and the UN community. And again, thank you to Edward and his team and Larry and all those who work with him in the incredible organization to help men and boys across America and right around the world. So it all starts with a woman, doesn't it? It all starts with a woman. What do you mean, Warwick? This is International Men's Day. It's not Women's Day. But let me say this to you. The reason I'm here today is because I have an Indian woman named Umuchela. And back in 2007, she communicated with me from India, where she was already running International Men's Day. So she'd started off. She'd also started the Save the Indian Family Foundation, Save Men Foundation. She was a powerhouse. and I believe still is to this day, although I haven't spoken to her very recently. But she stood up for men because in India they brought this horrible dowry law in, where if there was a problem in the marriage, the parents who organised the marriage would be thrown in jail, and the parents of the groom, quite literally. So it was actually quite antagonistic towards men, false allegations towards the family, and literally it was just horrific. And so she was fighting because she believed that men and women needed a fair go, not just women, but men and women, and that families needed a fair go. So she started the Save the Indian Family Foundation, and I was contacting her on the phone. She said, Warwick, you should celebrate International Men's Day. I said, what do you mean? I've never heard of International Men's Day before. She said, well, it's on the 19th of November, Warwick, and you can celebrate it. Pick a special occasion and build it around that occasion on the 19th of November. So I did some Googling. I checked that we had lost a battleship in World War II on the west coast of Tasmania. 642 men, I believe, lost their lives saving the nation of Australia. So we made that our first celebration in 2008, and I didn't know where the day came from at that stage, but we launched the internationalmensday.com website, and we had our first celebration in a state parliament here in New South Wales, here in Australia, in Sydney, the capital of this particular state. And sure enough, it's all because a woman who was fighting for men. And today I want to say a huge thank you to all the women who are fighting for men. I know we've got some wonderful women on the call. We've got Rebecca. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for all the work you do, and Lynn, and many, many others. So International Men's Day. So we set off on this journey. Where did this day come from? How did it start? And then someone contacted us, and it was Jerome Tilak Singh who set the day up. Dr. Jerome Tilak Singh is a lecturer in history at Trinidad Tobago University, and he'd set the day up in honour of his father's birthday, which was the 19th of November. And also it was the day that the Trinidad team played against America in the World Soccer Cup. They lost, but he felt it was a very significant day. It was a day when the whole country got behind them and unified, and he wanted to celebrate that day and celebrate that feeling of love and unity and care and camaraderie. And so International Men's Day was born. Some people say it was Ron Osler that started International Men's Day. Yes, in 1993, a professor, Ron Osler from Kansas City University, did start International Men's Day, but it only went for 2 or 3 days. I should say 2 or 3 years, and it literally folded, and it didn't go forward. Mind you, the people in Malta kept it up every year. Thank God for the men's group, the Malta men's group, who kept it going. So we found out about International Men's Day. That event, by the way, is in February. International Men's Day was started on the 19th of November by Dr. Jerome Tilak Singh as it stands. So we contacted the Malta men's group and said, well, you want to celebrate on the 19th of November? No one else is celebrating February anymore. It all fell apart. Let's make the 19th of November work. Thank God they joined us. We contacted Russia, where they had a Men's Day celebrated in Russia, and the Gorbachev Foundation released that day, and we got together and worked with groups all over the world to make sure that they all celebrated International Men's Day in one day of the year, which is the 19th of November. So here we are today. Why? Because a woman believed in men. Let me just go back to Jerome Tilak Singh. He sends his apologies today. He couldn't make it. In fact, he's getting an award, probably the very first award he's received, 25 years on, from his own country. And so he's had to be there, and he couldn't make it tonight. So what are the objectives of International Men's Day? Well, you can check them on the website, but I would just like to share them with you, if I may. So there's 6 pillars. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pick up sticks. Number 6 is 6. To promote positive male role models, not just movie stars and sportsmen, but everyday working class men who are living decent, honest lives. And so this year, the theme for International Men's Day is positive male role models. Number 2, to celebrate men's positive contributions to society. You notice how it's about men's positive. We're not talking about toxic masculinity. That is a lie, everybody. You'd never say, talk about toxic femininity. What you've got is bad men and good men, bad women, good women, and masculinity is a gift, and it has to be used wisely and positively, and that's why we want to celebrate the gift, celebrate the goodness in that beautiful thing called masculinity. Number 3, to focus on men's health and well-being, social, emotional, physical, and spiritual. Number 4, to highlight discrimination against men in areas of social services, social attitudes and expectations, and law. To improve gender relations and promote gender equality. Number 6, to create a safer, better world where people can be safe and grow to reach their full potential. I'd like to finish by reading a quote from Dr. Jerome Tilak Singh. He couldn't be here tonight again. He sends his apologies. And this is what he says. And you'll find this on the website. International Men's Day has the potential to become the global medium to heal our world. The concept and themes of International Men's Day are designed to give hope to the depressed, faith to the lonely, comfort to the brokenhearted, and transcend barriers, eliminate stereotypes, and create a more caring humanity. Since its inception in 1999, International Men's Day has blossomed into a movement which promotes goodwill and has positively transformed the lives of many people all around the globe. Every year I am overjoyed to witness and read testimonies of persons who genuinely believe that the observance of International Men's Day has resulted in greater stability in their lives and guided them from darkness to light. Thank you so much, Larry, and thank you so much, everyone who's supporting International Men's Day. Happy International Men's Day.
Our next presenter is Dr. Edward Stevens, and he will discuss bringing the father into pregnancy. Good with the sound over there, right? Give me a thumbs up, please. Thank you. Dr. Stevens is the chairperson of the Foundation for Male Studies, an apolitical nonprofit working to bring rigorous academic understanding of factors leading to the decline of male as a path to creating actionable policy initiatives. As an MD psychiatrist with half a century of clinical experience, he created a medical psychological intake document to bring the father into the medical record. This single document reverses an institutional failure to give fatherhood official recognition. I'm proud to welcome Dr. Stevens.
Thank you, Larry. And mesdames et messieurs, thank you and welcome, and very special welcome to our ambassador from Senegal. Thank you so much for coming. We've heard a lot of repetition of the difficulties, so I'll keep the repetition of the difficulties brief. Worldwide, there is no question, but there is a decline in the prospects and performance of men and boys. The statistics in every country show a decline in male health, male performance in education, male participation in the economic life of the nation, and the diminishment of male participation in family and society. In the year 2000, the World Bank published a research-supported evaluation titled The Other Half of Gender. It's 2006, actually. Now, the other half of gender, I think we don't have to stretch our imagination to realize what they were talking about, but they did a research document, a book-length research document on the consequences, detailing the effects and consequences from all forms of support for women and girls, and the absence of even minimal support for issues affecting men and boys. The World Bank concluded that single gender support not only undermined the male population, but ultimately harmed the women and girls through the destruction of any reasonable cultural support systems. Worldwide, current medical management of the threshold event of pregnancy leaves the father out. There is no place in the medical record in any health system that I am aware of for the inclusion of the father. The father, the male half of every pregnancy, is omitted. The fact is that the father is one half of the pregnant couple. I've heard a lot about advocacy tonight, and I gave a lot of thought to advocacy advocacy because I come to a different point with it. Advocacy for a cause, no matter how worthy, without policy change and implementation of change is impotent. We have delivered the message. Neglected and failing men and boys demonstrates a moral crime against men and boys and a harm to all, especially women. I wanted to move beyond advocacy to action and policy, and with the creation of something that could be implemented here and now. The creation of a medical document to be given to every man who enters the fatherhood role in the human threshold event of pregnancy is a tool to bring about a fundamental change in the health administration system. This medical document that I am proposing, a questionnaire titled Bringing the Father into Pregnancy. This medical document changes the male role from that of observer to participant. It acknowledges fatherhood as having equal precedence as motherhood. It stands for the inclusion of the male. Fatherhood acknowledged is fatherhood empowered. Fathers that are acknowledged at the beginning of the threshold event of pregnancy are empowered to step over that threshold and become solidly connected and involved with the evolving family. Everyone here tonight is encouraged to review the work and to take it back to their own health systems. Take this back to your own health system as a real life, real-time way to fight the decline of the male and reverse it for the benefit of all. In this medical form, the other half of gender becomes an acknowledged central force for constructive gender holism. Now, if you search your papers there on your desk, there's a little précis, it looks like this, describing the Foundation for Male Studies and giving a little essay on the origins of this work. And if you turn the page, you come to the document itself. Father's before and after birth record. When I went to my friend obstetrician, a woman, lovely woman, and I asked her what they gave to the parents when they came in, she showed me what is known as the ACOG form, American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. And not to my surprise, but surprisingly, it had nothing about the father. So right from the get-go, the father is not included in the medical record. So I set about creating a document to replace that defective approach. And I started it off with the standard inventory of medical difficulties that a man might have, which is the same list that they have on the women's questionnaire. But then I began to move into the real essence of the situation for men. And that is that 10% of men develop depression in and around pregnancy, along with about 13 to 15% of women. Well, that's a big number. That's about 25% of every pregnancy is going to involve depression. And so I did a meta-analysis of the existing literature, and I came up with 16 questions for the antenatal questionnaire that if the father answers yes to any any of them, if there's a likelihood he will be affected. Answers yes to 2, he more likely. Answers yes to 3, he's definitely likely. And here's a sample of the question. Is it a planned pregnancy? Do you feel ready for the pregnancy? Are you under the age of 25? Do you feel involved in the pregnancy? Do you have the support of extended family? Do you have current anxiety or mental illness? Do you have a history of adverse childhood experience? Do you feel your partner is anxious or distressed? Now, these questions, there's 16 of them. They really go right to the heart of anticipating emotional difficulties in the father. And we know that if there's emotional difficulties in one parent, either the father or the mother, there's a 50% likelihood that there'll be the same in the other. And every pregnancy has an after-birth visit. And so I created another questionnaire, another set of questions, but this time, many fewer. But the questions that I asked here, do you feel connected to the baby? Do you have a special needs child? Do you feel sleep deprived? Do you feel concerned about your ability to father? Do you feel trapped? Do you feel your partner is anxious or stressed? Is there anyone you can turn to for help? If the father answers yes to any of these questions, there's a definite indication that there is difficulty. Now, administratively, what does this mean? Give it out on the first visit. What does it mean? It means when the likelihood of difficulty emerges, the ordinary social services that are given to every pregnancy can simply be brought to bear. But in this case, with this questionnaire and with this information, they can be brought to bear ahead of time so that we're not playing, as in my lifetime as a psychiatrist, not playing catch up with the emotional difficulties of the father and the mother. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens. Our next speaker is Stephen Boyd, who will present Justice Delayed is Justice Denied. Stephen Boyd is the founder of a nonprofit organization, the Gabriella Boyd Foundation. He's an advocate for family court reform and also seeks to reform and improve the disconnect in training, education, and implementation of strategic policy and procedure within local law enforcement and other agencies that deal with domestic disputes and child welfare. Stephen is a college graduate, small business owner and operator, and much more to many different people. However, his proudest achievement was and will always be fatherhood. Welcome, Stephen, please.
Thank you, Larry, and hello to all you out there in TV land. I was involved in my daughter Gabriella's life from her mother's third trimester until 2 weeks after she was born on July 26th of 2015, 2 days before my birthday. I always said that in 2015 I got my greatest birthday present, and it was given to me in a hospital. However, after only seeing her for a few days, I would not see her again until October, because her mother wrongfully kept her away from me. Family court petitions, false accusations, uncaring judges, and unethical lawyers resulted in me spending only 2 days a week for 9 hours a day with my daughter. Gabriella Boyd was an innocent victim and just another statistic in the biased, backwards, and outdated New York State family court system, despite my best efforts in showing the court that it was in the best interest of Gabriella that she be with me. She had big brown eyes and a big bright smile. Gabriella, Gabby, Gabs, Ladybug, or Mama was sure to put a smile on your face. She was a very happy little girl, outgoing, independent, fearless, sneaky, and very clever. She was a great listener, and she understood a lot more than a lot of people thought she did. 2 weeks after she was born, I became an alienated father in a high conflict relationship. In June of 2016, I reluctantly entered into my first parenting agreement that was ordered by a family court judge in Westchester County. I was a model parent, but her mother had a different agenda. Violation after violation, withheld visitation time, no co-parenting, but I followed through, I followed the law, and I continued to build my case for the next 2 years. Sunday, April 22nd, 2018, that was Earth Day. After taking Gabriella out on a nature trail, I learned from my ex's mother that my ex was thrown out of her mother's house, where she was living with Gabriella, because of her extremely erratic and aggressive behavior. My ex's behavior had become so explosive and erratic that I feared for my daughter's safety. As per my parenting agreement, I had to return her to the residence, but I knew I had to take action. What I didn't know is that was the last day I would see my daughter alive. On April 27th of 2018, I and my attorney were able to secure a court-ordered TRO, or a temporary restraining order, that awarded me temporary physical custody of Gabriella and included a stay-away directive for myself and Gabriella away from my ex. Under the instruction of my attorney, I went to the police station to have the order served. The police did this. However, they did not enforce the contents of the order. They merely read her the paper, handed it to her, and then they had the door slammed in their faces with no compliance. Despite this red flag of danger, the police left. After many hours and many agencies like CPS, the Office of the District Attorney, as well as VMPD, nobody made the right call to get Gabriella out of the house. No one except for her father was willing to go inside the house to save her from the imminent danger. Because of their ignorance, the situation was exacerbated, because now my ex knew she officially lost. Every way that she tried to control me, the threats, keeping my daughter away from me, abusing the court system, nothing worked, and the game was over. She realized this and wanted to cause me pain by hurting somebody I love dearly. I called the police station the next morning. It was a Saturday. I was supposed to have my visitation, but my ex denied it to me, claiming Gabriella was sick and that she was taking her to the doctor. I reminded the desk officer that I spoke with that last night, after speaking with CPS, the on-call ADAs, and my attorney, that we were going to be in a public place and I needed them to immediately enforce the order that they failed to do yesterday because my daughter wasn't safe. The officer incorrectly told me that this was, quote, a civil matter and that there was nothing they could do, end quote. My 2.5-year-old baby girl, who could barely speak, was murdered shortly after this conversation on April 28, 2018. Her death was completely preventable. My ex wanted to hurt me by hurting Gabriella Christine Boyd. The narcissistic abuser seeks to control, but she could not control me because I followed the law and properly sought protection of the courts. Unfortunately, those who are tasked with carrying out orders of the court did not do their duties. Devastated by my pain, I committed myself to ensuring that Gabriella's tragic death would not be in vain. I dedicated myself to court reform, raising awareness of problems in the system, and helping parents avoid similar problems that I went through. The Gabriella Boyd Memorial Foundation has a mission to help educate and assist those who don't have the resources to help themselves. We want to be able to help those who are struggling, just like I did, to have a chance to better understand their rights in the family court system. This foundation has the help of local law enforcement, social workers, family lawyers, and community activists for parents who want to be present in their children's lives, who, for whatever reason, can't help themselves. We are also involved with other foundations who have the same goal of promoting the well-being of our children. To date, we have assisted both mothers and fathers across the United States, from Florida all the way across to Nevada. We also helped out in other countries like Canada, the United Kingdom, and Brazil. We have met a lot of amazing parents who are fighting and continue to fight to have access to their children and be in their lives. My family and I are currently awaiting trial in the Second Department Appellate Division since 2021, after a setback in court. We continue to fight and encourage you all to do the same because our children are the most vulnerable parts of society and they need to be protected. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Our next speaker is David Heleniak, who will discuss domestic violence restraining orders and criminal equity. David is an attorney and an independent scholar in New Jersey whose published articles include the New Star Chamber, the New Jersey Family Court, and the Prevention of Domestic Violence Act, and erring on the side of hidden harm, the granting of domestic violence restraining orders. In 2022, he received an LLM in International Legal Studies from Liberty School of Law. His most recent article on the topic of domestic violence restraining orders, Shuttering the New Star Chamber, toward a populist strategy against criminal equity in family court, can be found online at the Liberty University Law Review website. Please welcome David Heleniak.
Good evening. Domestic violence restraining orders go by many other names, such as orders of protection or protective orders. I'm just going to use the term restraining orders. In America, the rates of domestic violence committed against men and women are roughly the same. Indeed, the CDC found in a 2010 survey that men were actually more often the victim of domestic violence than women were in the preceding 12-month period. Nevertheless, domestic violence restraining orders are overwhelmingly issued against men, which makes them a suitable topic for International Men's Day. This evening, I'd like to go over 1, the denial of due process to restraining order defendants, as well as 2, criminal equity, also known as government by injunction. As I'll explain, these go hand in hand. In my opinion, the most important due process protection that is denied restraining order defendants is the right to a jury trial. Judges are under a tremendous amount of pressure to grant restraining orders. If they were to not deny one and something headline grabbing happened soon thereafter, they'd be blamed. Last year, in United States versus Rahimi, the Fifth Circuit ruled that it was unconstitutional for the government to deprive someone subject to restraining orders of their firearms. In his concurrence, Judge Ho made note of due process issues concerning restraining orders. For example, he noted the tremendous pressure that judges are under to grant them. The case went up to the United States Supreme Court and the Fifth Circuit was reversed. In deciding it, the Supreme Court made it a point to avoid the issue of due process. This means the issue is still open. In light of Judge Ho's recent recognition that restraining orders may have a due process problem, I believe the time to attack restraining order statutes is now. I'd therefore like to briefly go over what I believe is a powerful argument against restraining orders, which is that they constitute criminal equity, aka government by injunction. Criminal equity and government by injunction is shorthand for saying a practice is unconstitutional because it entails a criminal matter being handled by an equity court. Or put another way, it entails the government handling crimes through the use of injunctions. Restraining orders are typically issued by family courts, which are equity courts. For the non-lawyers present, what I believe is the critical distinction between equity courts and other courts is that equity courts grant injunctions. An injunction is an order issued by a judge directing someone to either do something or refrain from doing something. In contrast to equity courts, in regular civil courts, you only get to sue for money. In criminal courts, because liberty is so important, defendants are given many due process protections. So in addition to the jury, which I just mentioned, there's a higher standard of proof than in the civil court. There's often a right to a free attorney. And in contrast to what I've seen in restraining order hearings, there's a full evidentiary hearing, not just a summary hearing. The power of injunctions come from the power of the court to find defendants in contempt for violating an injunction and then punish them. Restraining orders are injunctions. Restraining order statutes differ from state to state, but typically the way they work is that a family court judge is called upon to find that an act of domestic violence occurred and that there's a risk that the alleged victim might suffer further abuse. The judge will usually then issue an order with various provisions, including the provision that the abuser cannot go near the victim and cannot commit any further abuse. These orders can have devastating effects on defendants. Most notably, if he's a father, it can affect his ability to participate in the life of his child. Dad is thrown out of the house. Often he's restricted to supervised visitation. Sometimes he's forced to undergo counseling before he can see his kid. It's often a living nightmare. Now, this is the part I'm interested in. Around the turn of the last century, meaning 1900 or 2000, criminal equity was actually a hot topic. In 1896, the Democrats actually had a statement against government by injunction in its national platform. Many law review articles from this time period criticized the practice and often made reference to the Star Chamber. I don't know if anyone's heard of the Star Chamber, but it was a court of criminal equity that originated in England in the late 1400s and served as an alternative to the regular criminal courts. It was named for the stars painted on the ceiling of the room in which the cases were tried. It was shut down in the 1600s and became synonymous with unfair courts, like how we say kangaroo court today. Around 1900, there were two main areas in which government by injunction was practiced: labor disputes and vice. In the case of labor disputes, if an employer caught wind that a strike was about to happen, he would go to equity court and he would get an injunction against the strike. And then if the strikers committed a crime in the course of their strike, they were hauled back to the equity court judge and they were punished. It was a way to circumvent normal due process given to defendants. Labor activists were ultimately successful in getting legislation passed that put an end to the practice. The most important example of this is the North LaGuardia Act, passed in 1932. But while labor was victorious, the peddlers of vice were not. So once upon a time in America, cities had red light districts like they do today in Europe. There were places well known by locals where people could go to partake in illegal vices such as prostitution, gambling, or illegal alcohol. Moral crusaders were able to get laws passed that shut these places down through the use of injunctions. My favorite case is Hedden versus Hand, a New Jersey decision from 1919 that struck down an anti-vice law for being criminal equity, though it didn't use the term. With Hedden, though, New Jersey was the only state to find this type of law unconstitutional. In other words, in the area of vice, the promoters of government by injunction won. In both areas, vice and labor, the fight over government injunction ended about 100 years ago. And I believe as time passed, the concept slipped from the public mind. And now with restraining order statutes, government by injunction is back with a vengeance. Drawing upon America's traditional hostility to criminal equity, going back to England's bad experience with the Star Chamber, strong legal arguments could be crafted against the different statutes. I believe it's now time to dust off the government by injunction critique found in old cases and old law review articles and bring it forward. Different states have different restraining order schemes and different case law, so the arguments would have to be customized. But I could see all of them contending that the statute at issue has created a new Star Chamber. I very much encourage this. Labor did it, so can dads. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Dr. Edward Bartlett, who will discuss women's health research and the big lie. Dr. Bartlett is the president of the Domestic Abuse and Violence International Alliance. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and a PhD in Public Health from Johns Hopkins University. Over the years, he's worked as an Army medical corpsman, community health educator, professor of public health, risk management consultant, editor of an international peer-reviewed journal, and most recently for a regulatory agency at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Please welcome Dr. Ed Bartlett.
Good evening. We're going to return to the theme, the broader theme of health that Dr. Stevens initiated a few minutes ago. And we're going to be talking about women's health research and the feminist big lie. So for years, literally going back to the 1990s, people have been claiming that women were shortchanged, routinely excluded from medical research. This is a 1993, next slide, please, a 1993 editorial in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is one of the leading medical journals in the United States. Quote, "There is little doubt that women have been systematically excluded as subjects for study. It is not surprising that most clinical trials have been heavily, if not exclusively, weighted toward men." That was the statement in the New England Journal of Medicine. Other persons I'm not going to read, but similar statements were made by other leading persons, again, in the 1990s. Next slide, please. So let's fast forward to last year. Jill Biden announced a new White House initiative focused on women's health research. Quote, this has been underfunded for decades. Where have we heard that claim before? And so here, $731 million allocated for this White House initiative on women's health. Next slide. So, and this is part of the article that appeared in Fortune magazine. This is a screenshot. It's exactly what it said. Women's health research is consistently underfunded. Research, quote, research on women's health has been underfunded for decades, Jill Biden said. Many conditions that mostly or only affect women or affect women differently have received little to no attention. All right. Well, that was the claim made very recently in a well-respected magazine. So let's now, those are the claims. Let's now look at the data. It turns out the data tells a very different story. Well, let's start off with what's referred to as the lifespan gender gap. Lifespan gender gap, and this displays practically every country in the world. And you can see on the left side, that's the life expectancy of women. On the bottom aspect, that's the life expectancy for men. So, for example, there's a dot, and I'm actually going to point it out here. So there's a dot right here. Sorry, right here. So you can see there's two dots. One is labeled Russia. In Russia, the lifespan gender gap is 12 years. 12 years difference in life expectancy. The little dot right next to Russia is, guess what? Ukraine. Ukraine also has a lifespan gender gap of about 10 years, 10 to 11 years. But most countries are not that extreme. It's in the United States is a 5-year lifespan gender gap. And that's sort of the average that we've seen around the world. But in not a single country, again, not in a single country are men outliving women. Next slide. So this is an article that I wrote. It's published in a leading epidemiological journal, published in 2001, that simply asked the question, did medical research routinely exclude women? So the whole point was to actually look at the data, look at the evidence. The link is right there on the slide. So let's go to the next slide. So one of the tables from this article looked just at epidemiological research, not drug trials, not social behavioral research, just epidemiological research. And this is using a database called Medline. Medline is considered the best source of data on medical research. So the first column is the different diseases. These are many of the leading diseases in the country. The second column is how many in this time period, this is 1966 to 1990. So this was before any quote corrective measures were taken. How many of those studies had male participants? How many of those studies had female participants? You can see the totals in the bottom row there. Totals, you can see there were more studies that had female participants than male participants. Again, this is back from 1966 to 1990, going back quite a period of time. Next slide. So as a result of hearings held in Congress on this purported exclusion of women from medical research, a new law was passed in 1993 called the NIH Revitalization Act. And part of that act required the NIH to track the number of male participants and number of female participants in all NIH-funded research. So that was law passed in 1993. 1994 was the first year they actually had this operational. Surprise, surprise. Turned out all NIH studies, extramural, men represented almost 45% of all enrollees. Women, almost 52%. Surprise. 3.3% unknown. Well, that's some very interesting data. Goes back to 1994. Next slide, please. So 2001, I did a report. I have a copy of it here. Be happy to, it's online. Looking at the whole, not just NIH, but looking at all of Department of Health and Human Services, which is where I used to work, looking at the budget, sex-specific research budget for men's health and women's health. You can see right there the conclusion, a 5-to-1 disparity favoring women's health over men's health. Keep in mind, it's men who are dying 5 years earlier, and in every other indicator are lagging behind women in terms of health status. Next slide, please. So let's now fast forward to the present time. So there's now, it's called the Office for Women's Health in the Department of Health and Human Services. And very recently, they issued this report that lists, the top part lists all of the offices for women's health in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. You can see there's 8. Now, if you look at the very bottom there, kind of small print, offices and administrative entities within HHS that focus on improving the health of men. Can any of you see that, what it says there? Office of Indian Men's Health, parenthesis, not yet staffed or funded. Isn't that a little bit ironic? But that was the report that we recently discovered. So going to the last slide here. So we're going to be candid here. We're going to call this not just a misrepresentation. We're going to call it not just a lie. We're going to call it the big lie. Because what is a big lie? It's a statement, it's a claim that's made. It's a gross distortion of the truth. It's a misrepresentation of the truth, primarily used as a propaganda approach. All right. So the claim that women were underrepresented in medical research or otherwise shortchanged in clinical trials compared to men is a modern day example of the big lie. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bartlett. And thank you, all 4 preceding speakers, for presenting tonight.
I have a question for David. You talked about restraining orders and star chambers. What is your proposed solution to restraining orders and the restraining order issue? Are you of the belief that they should be canceled permanently, forever, always, or is there a different solution?
All right. Well, I have thought about it. It's a conundrum, to be honest. I mean, my gut reaction is to get rid of them and then have rigorous police. The regular criminal court. Just prosecutors really crack down on domestic violence, really prosecute them, punish real abusers hard, and put an end that way. I've been playing around with the idea of getting rid of the DV statutes, but allowing judges to grant injunctions to protect to some degree. But these would have to be crafted and case by case customized, as opposed to what we have now, which is a cookie cutter approach, and like tremendous political pressure to just throw data out of the house and just pile on, right? I think that's fair to say. And if you get rid of the politicization of it, some kind of injunctive relief might not be a bad thing. And in fact, before these domestic violence statutes were implemented, it was very rare for judges to grant injunctions for violence because there was this view that you can protect property with injunctions, but not personal bodily well-being, integrity. And maybe had they been a little bit more flexible, the impetus for these DV statutes wouldn't have been so great.
Can I do a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What do you think about this idea, pros and cons? If there's a restraining order by parent A versus parent B or husband A versus wife, what if they went both ways automatically? Because if somebody is a victim and they want the other person away from them, you don't want that alleged victim to abuse that order and incriminate the other person intentionally. But there should also be no reason for the victim to want to be near the alleged criminal. So what if you made restraining orders go both ways instantly on day one? Is that an option? Or is that a bad option?
Did you guys hear that online?
Yes.
Give me a thumbs up. Yeah, good. Thanks.
So what my general theme is that these injunctions are basically bad because they then allow further problems. So dad's enjoined from doing XYZ, and then he can be hauled back into court and says, you did XYZ, or you did X or Y, or, and it's maybe dubious, but now you've got another summer hearing and it's another way to just keep adding to the stress. It's more gamesmanship. Like I think it's fair to say that these restraining orders are often requested as part of an openings move in a divorce. And then when they're there, they can be used again. Like I really don't want dad seeing the kid as much. I'm going to say he violated the restraining order. That's going to throw some chaos into the mix, and then dad won't see the kid until they like sort that out. It's like an alienating tool. So I generally don't like injunctions. If you're going to have them, they should be more case by case crafted, like injunctions are supposed to be. That's what equity court's supposed to do, like create a case by case customized solution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else online?
We have a plethora of kudos and thank yous from everyone here online and really enjoyed the presentations. Nothing further to add at this point. Thank you.
Rebecca, thank you. Again, I want to thank again our speakers, and I want to conclude by thanking everyone in the room and everyone online for joining us. Your presence and advocacy is crucial toward recognizing and addressing these challenges. Have a great rest of November, Men's Equality Month. Please continue to spread awareness of the 12 items of male inequality. And when you post on social media or share these presentations that'll be online, please remember to use the hashtags, hashtag gender equality for men and hashtag Men's Equality Month for the rest of November. Thank you online, and thank you here today. Good night, everyone.